Quote of the day. Joy is like glitter. Once you throw it around, everyone ends up sparkling, even if they don't want to. The joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah chapter 8 verse 10. That is your quote of the day. Now let's get right into this video. Now Smackdown this week, it was alright, nothing crazy, nothing too memorable, nothing too important really even happened. It was just it was an alright show, right smack dab in the middle of the road, nothing extraordinary, but nothing too terrible either. It was pointless, as always, it was pointless. Really, nothing got advanced, nothing much happened, but I guess it wasn't terrible. At least I think so anyway. On this episode, we got literally 3.5 matches. And I'm saying 3.5 because we got 3 solid matches and 1 match that didn't even start. So I'm not counting that as a match. That was like a half match. It was a match that turned into a brawl, so it doesn't even count. So we got 3.5 matches and 1 silly promo, and that was literally your whole show, and that was that. So like, you see what I mean? It was all right. It wasn't terrible. The matches were pretty decent, and the promo I'm talking about was pretty funny. It was a Brock Lesnar and R-Truth promo, pointless but funny. So like, it was all right. It was definitely watchable. Nothing like I'd go rage about or anything, but it wasn't anything crazy either. But anyhow, let's just jump right into this review. All right, so we kicked off with a Brock Lesnar and R-Truth in-ring promo, and this was funny, but it bothered me because like I thought with them announcing that Brock Lesnar was going to be on SmackDown, I thought we were finally going to get an explanation of sorts, finally getting some enlightenment. We're getting, some light shed on the situation. Nope, we got Brock Lesnar and Ron Cena. I'm like, come on, dude. And it makes no sense. You're telling me last Friday was John Cena's last SmackDown. Now you have Brock Lesnar showing up on SmackDown to cut a promo against John Cena, who's no longer showing up on SmackDown anymore. What sense does that make? Where's the correlation, But whatever. But anyway, basically, we kick off with Brock Lesnar coming out, and he gets on the mic. And before Brock Lesnar could even say anything, we hear, "What's up? What's up?" We hear R-Truth's theme song hit. R-Truth comes out. Ron Cena comes out. Ron Killings Truth comes out, And R-Truth says, "I'm going to be the first WWE superstar to say this, Brock Lesnar. Welcome back. But with that being said, I used to be scared of you, Brock. I'm not scared of you anymore." Brock Lesnar tells R-Truth, "First of all, I don't even know who you are, and you better have a damn good reason for interrupting me." R-Truth goes on to say, "You've been bullying my childhood hero, my older brother, John Cena, for 25 years, and I'm standing up for him. I'm out here to defend him." And Brock Lesnar tells R-Truth, "I'm only here for John Cena. Do you know where he is? No? Then why the hell are you in my ring?" And then R-Truth goes on to say, "As a matter of fact, my name is Ron Cena, and I'm here to defend my older brother, John Cena." And mind you, R-Truth is older than John Cena. He's out here calling John Cena his older brother. This was funny, And I'm like, silly R-Truth is back. I don't know how I feel about it, but whatever, I'm just here for the ride. Anyhow, R-Truth says that this John Cena, this new version of John Cena, he's built different this year. This is a different John Cena this year. And he's even made a kid cry. So he tells Brock Lesnar, Super Cena won't be running from the beast this time around. He's going to be feeding on the beast. And Brock Lesnar has enough of this disrespect. He has enough of R-Truth running his mouth. Brock Lesnar loses his mind. And he picks up R-Truth and F5s the life out of R-Truth. He hits R-Truth with a mean F5. And somehow, in the process of Brock Lesnar F5ing R-Truth, he somehow rips his pants. And I don't even know how that happened. Like, it was the weirdest sequence of events. Brock Lesnar F5s R-Truth, rips his pants, then Brock Lesnar turns around to the camera, he flashes his booty cheeks at the camera, and then he starts twerking. And I'm like, excuse me, what am I watching? Never in my life did I think I would see the beast incarnate Brock Lesnar shaking cheeks. I'm like, what is this? Man started twerking with ripped pants on national TV. Families watch this show, Brock. Jesus Christ. It was so funny. I was so confused. I'm like, what am I watching? Dude, oh my God, this was so funny. And anyhow, that was your opening segment, your opening promo, and that was the opening of the show. After this, we moved on and we got a Solo Sikoa video package promo. So it was basically Solo Sikoa, on the Titantron, and he was cutting a promo. And Solo Sikoa was basically fuming, he was losing his mind. He was saying how he lost everything. I lost my bloodline. I lost my family. I lost the Ulafala. And now I've even lost the United States Championship. All that for what? I lost everything for what? Solo Sikoa says, "I'm done living in the shadows of others. Big changes will be made around here. Me and the MFTs are going to run everything once more. Changes are going to be made." And that's how the video package promo ends, you know, with Solo Sikoa just saying, what did I do all this for? Why did I lose all this? What's going on? Changes need to be made. And me and the MFTs are going to run SmackDown all over again. We're going to come back and we're going to run WWE again, you know? So that was basically that. So I guess there's maybe going to be a shift in the dynamic of the group. I don't know if they're going to be more serious, more menacing. I don't know. But I don't even know how you could save this group at this point. So I don't know. I'm interested to see where it goes, but, you know, I don't really have too much hope in this. Anyhow, after this, we finally got to our first match of the night, and it was a Sami Zayn Open Challenge, you know, the United States Open Challenge. And I really love this concept. And some of the, you know, matchups we're getting, dude, it's peak, you know. I'm really enjoying this stuff because this week we got Sami Zayn versus Rey Fenix. This was an absolute banger. And next week we're going to get Sami Zayn versus Carmelo Hayes in another United States Open Challenge match. So I really love this concept, you know, coming back. This is going to add a whole nother, you know, dynamic to the show, a whole nother, you know, a whole nother layer to things, I guess. But anyhow, we got on to our first match, and it was Sami Zayn versus Rey Fenix, a United States Championship Open Challenge. And this match was really entertaining. Sami Zayn and Rey Fenix just clicked in the ring, you know, they just clicked. The chemistry was there, everything was just flowing, you know. And this was an absolute banger. We saw so many crazy spots, sequences, and high-flying moves from Rey Fenix, as well as Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn absolutely showed out too, you know. This was a really fun match. And Rey Fenix, as always, you know, he's incredible in the ring. He was a delight to watch. You know, I enjoyed this match. But anyways, after a hard-fought match, Sami Zayn was able to hit a haluva kick on Rey Fenix for the win, and Sami Zayn retains his United States Championship. And after this match, we got a video package from the Wyatt Six, you know, and they were basically issuing out a warning to the Street Profits. So the Wyatt Six were basically telling the Street Profits that, you know, the Street Profits now, they're at a standstill. They're at a fork in the road, and they have to make a choice whether or not to stay together or to break up, you know, and get all this over with. And the Wyatt Six basically tell the Street Profits, it's time to make a choice. You either stay together or you go your separate ways and stop holding each other back. We will not be responsible for what happens to the Street Profits. We just planted the seeds. Now the rest lies in your hands. It's up to you to decide where you go from here. And I found that pretty interesting, you know. But yeah, that was that. And after this, we got to what should have been our second match of the night. It ended up being the half match, you know. And I didn't even want to see this in the first place, so I'm not really too mad that it got ruined and it turned into a brawl. So we got to our half match, and it was B-Fab versus Julia. And I don't even know if this was going to be for the United States Championship or not. I don't know. It was just announced, whatever. So this match never officially got started, you know. It just kicked off in a brawl right after Julia came out, B-Fab came out, and they just started fighting, you know. And the match never started. The bell never rung, so it doesn't matter. So they broke out into a huge brawl. It was a 2-on-1 brawl, you know. And then Mia Chen ended up coming out with a kendo sticks to even the odds, and she came out to rescue B-Fab, and that was that, and that's how that whole match ended, and that's how the segment ended, you know. This was kind of a waste of time, but not really, because we didn't get to see the match, which is a positive in my opinion, you know. This wasn't going to be anything good, so whatever. After this, we moved on, and we got an Aleister Black video package, and it was just Aleister Black issuing out a warning to Damian Priest and telling Damian Priest that this rivalry, this feud, this is far from over, you know. So Aleister Black is like, until Damian Priest decides to admit it and he quits, I'm not in this. Damian Priest needs to realize that, you know, he's outmatched, he's outclassed, and he needs to, you know, basically beg for forgiveness. And this isn't over till Damian Priest admits that I've won, you know, stuff like that. So basically he issues out a warning to Damian Priest. And after this, we got to our third match of the night, and it was The Storm, Jade Cargill versus Tiffany Stratton for the Women's Championship. And this was actually a pretty solid match in my opinion. Nothing crazy, but it was solid in ring, you know. But stupidly enough, this match ended in a double countout, which kind of bothered me. I was really hoping that Jade would finally, you know, pick up her first women's championship and she would dethrone Tiffany Stratton, because Tiffany Stratton is really not doing anything with this women's championship. Like, she's had it for what, like 250 days at this point, 200 something days, you know. Like, what's one memorable feud she's had? I can't name you one off the top of my head. So like, she hasn't really done anything with it. And they're saying that, you know, she's 15-0 this year. I'm like, come on, dude. Like, how is she 15-0 this year? That's crazy to me, but whatever. Anyhow, we got to the match, and like I said, it was pretty solid. And it was a pretty solid match before, you know, it ended in the double count match, you know. But anyhow, these stars, both of them, Jade Cargill and Tiffany Stratton, they, you know, they showed up, they did their thing, they were solid in the ring, you know, and they both had their own move sets, you know. They had their moments, you know, getting the upper hand, having some good offense here and there, you know. So it was pretty 50-50, I would say. Anyways, after the double count out call, you know, the ref, you know, rings the bell. It's double count out. Nobody wins. It's basically a no contest. Nia Jax ends up coming out of nowhere, and she destroys both Jade Cargill and Tiffany Stratton. You know, she leaves them laid out. She smashes Jade Cargill into the steel stairs. She hits Tiffany Stratton with like an annihilator or something like that. And it was just that, she comes out and just picks at the bones of the already, laid out superstars. After this, we got a literally 10-minute long documentary of the history between Brock Lesnar and John Cena. And this was really long, like I said. It was like, I think it was at least 10 minutes. Minimum, it was 10 minutes. This was really long. Anyhow, this was long, but I did really enjoy it, and I found it really informative and interesting, in my opinion. I enjoyed it. It was the history between John Cena and Brock Lesnar. And there was a lot of information I actually did not know myself. I've been watching this for, like I said, since I was about 5 years old at this point. So, like, there's a lot of story I know. There's elements I know. I know the story, superstars, and everything like that. But there was things that I didn't know about Brock Lesnar and John Cena. And I found it really interesting learning about it. So, like I said, it was really informative and it was really interesting. And being that I've been a fan since I was about 5 years old, dude, and I'm almost 21 at this point. So, like, it's crazy. And I'm like, I didn't even know this stuff. So if I found it interesting, I'm sure the new fans and, probably you, the audience, the fans, the crowds, everybody, stuff. So, like, if I don't know some of the stuff, I know a lot of you are going to find it really interesting as well. So I would really recommend you watch it, give it a watch, because it's really fun information, really interesting in my opinion. So, yeah. Anyways, after this, we finally got to our main event, and it was the Viper Randy Orton versus the Scottish psychopath Drew McIntyre. This was a slow paced type of match. It wasn't terrible by any means, but it was just slow paced. And it was just these two men basically just methodically and strategically picking at each other's bones, picking at specific body parts, targeting specific body parts, and that was basically what this match was. Drew McIntyre was targeting Randy Orton's leg and his back, and Randy Orton was targeting Drew McIntyre's legs and back as well, So they were just basically targeting each other's body parts, slowly and methodically, just making sure everything hurt, And that was basically the point of this match. Anyways, at the end of the match, Randy Orton tried to line up a punt kick on Drew McIntyre, and for whatever reason, the referee decided to step in and stop Randy Orton. And using that split distraction window, Drew McIntyre was able to use the opportunity to hit a Claymore kick on Randy Orton instead for the win, and Drew McIntyre pins Randy Orton 1-2-3 in the middle of the ring. After the match ends, Drew McIntyre decides that wasn't enough, and he was about to Claymore Randy Orton's head through the announcer's table, and out of nowhere, we hear adrenaline in my veins. And out of nowhere, we hear Cody Rhodes' theme song hits, and Cody Rhodes comes running out to save Randy Orton, and he gets his hits on Drew McIntyre. He gets a few punches in, and Cody Rhodes then proceeds to announce that, he'll be facing off against Drew McIntyre at WrestlePalooza. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, how do you announce a match before they even have a promo? They haven't even faced off face to face and said anything to each other. And you're like, this match is happening, deal with it. I'm like, whatever. But anyways, that's how the show ends, with Randy Orton laid out, Drew McIntyre laid out, and Cody Rhodes returning, announcing that he will be facing off against Drew McIntyre at WrestlePalooza. And that was your whole show. And overall, I would rate this episode a solid 4 out of 10. Like I said, we got 3.5 matches and one funny, pointless promo segment, and that was that. And that was about it. There's nothing much else to really talk about. Nothing much else happened. Nothing really advanced. Nothing new happened. That was that. So this show wasn't terrible, but it wasn't exceptional either, So that's my rating, and that's my review, and that's my breakdown. Anyhow, thank you for showing up. Thank you for hearing me out, and thank you for being here. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want to. Like, comment, and subscribe if you'd like to. And like, comment, and subscribe if you choose to. As always, it's been a pleasure. I'm out.